the other organisers, in particular Anthony at the back, who's recording and has got AV stuff going on, and he also puts, and the other organisers, Dee, Aaron and a few others, put the resources online. So we've actually got videos, slides available online. So if you missed out on last month, you can always grab those as well. So my name's Chris. I'm going to be talking about installing WordPress. And I've got the wrong title on my own slide, so that's the first thing. Okay, so before we begin, what do we need to know to set up WordPress? Also a walkthrough of a 5-minute install. We'll be going through detailed steps, very detailed steps, and then we'll actually do a live demo just to show you how easy it is. And I think there are a lot of other options to install WordPress. It's pretty easy, and there's no reason why you can't do it the preferred way. We talk about common installation problems, other methods of installation, also some next steps. So quick show of hands, who here already has a current WordPress site? Okay, so vast majority. Okay, that's good. So who here has installed it themselves? Okay, so a few less. Okay, that's good. So it doesn't actually hurt to go through and know what's happening under the hood. And the goal of tonight's session is to really demystify a lot of the jargon and try and get you comfortable with working with your own site. So before you begin, so hopefully you've always got surgery.com or Google, or you can always ask people. So yeah, so totally lost icon, okay? So the good thing is, especially with working with platforms like WordPress, a really active community, helpful bunch of people. You've got meetups like this, you've got forums, mailing lists, a whole bunch of other options for you. A lot of companies that also specialize in really good support, but you've always got, you can always go to the internet. So what we covered last month is web hosting and domain name. So we're assuming that you already have this and that it's all already pointed to your web host. And when you sign up for an account, you usually get details such as cPanel or something similar, so we're assuming you've got that already to go. And I've got there, if you've missed the meetup, there are actually slides from last month covering that. So WordPress itself has a pretty detailed guide, which is always worth referencing if you need a go-to set of instructions. But the thing that people talk about, or WordPress uses, is the famous 5-minute install. And it really doesn't take that long, and I'll show you how quick and easy it is. But there are a few things you want to do to make sure it's done correctly, and Amelia will be covering what to do once you've got WordPress installed, such as configuring it, securing it, these sorts of things. That's really that's it, its entirety. You don't have to worry about that, just to show you that really there's not much to it. So high-level overview is that you download WordPress, which is a bunch of files, a web application, upload the files to your web host, which is just a server, so think of it just like you've got files on your computer. You're downloading WordPress and uploading them to your web server. Create a database and a database user, and that's where WordPress stores all of its content, or most of its content and configuration. And also you run the installation script, which basically where you set the site name, a few other options, and that's when you can dig into the dashboard, which is what manages the site. So step 1, download WordPress. So you go to wordpress.org and always download from wordpress.org. Don't download it from any other site. That's the definitive source. As you can see, there's a button there. You click on it, you get that file. Currently, that's the file that you get. So inside that file is, I'll show you in a second, but it's a zip file full of mostly PHP files. So it's a web application that sits on your server, and there are also some images and some HTML, JavaScript, CSS kind of stuff to make it all look nice. But under the hood, this is WordPress, what it looks like. That's all you have to worry about at the moment. So next thing to do, we upload it to your web host. So quick show of hands, who here uses FTP? Who has an FTP client? Okay, so about half. Okay, so essentially what we're going to do in the demo, we're going to use cPanels, or your web host control panel, a file manager, which is really a web-based version of an FTP client. So if you're using file manager or cPanel, you're pretty much using the same thing. So this is what cPanel looks like. And if you don't have cPanel, your web host probably has something very similar and equivalent, but this is definitely the market leader in terms of popularity. So Most hosting companies provide something like this. And you'll see here you've got File Manager. So what File Manager does is it lets you, and we just go in here, first time you click on it, I recommend ticking this little box here that says Show Hidden Files, called .files. Basically, in the Unix operating system, which is what web servers usually run, a .file is hidden. So we want to make sure that we can see all the hidden files. And there are a couple of files that you might come across, especially if you want to use search-friendly URLs or permalinks, pretty links. You'll use something called htaccess. We'll cover that, though. So that's what it looks like. So basically, you've got the folders on your web server, and then you can upload, edit, copy, do all sorts of things to those files. Now, this file here, .ftb quota, it's basically a file that this particular web host puts on your system. You may have, I've left that there just to show you that you may have files similar to that. So if you log in and you see, I've got a bunch of dot something and dot, something else, that's okay. They're system files that the web host has put there. So don't worry about it. You can't, that's okay. It says FTP quota. But I think the point is that if you see files there, and if it's an existing site, you'll already have files there. So then upload. So what we do is we select our file, which was the WordPress blah, 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 .zip. And you can see down here it uploads. And then we're left with the zip file. So if you were to go to the URL of your site, you would see that file just sitting there. Well, obviously, that doesn't do anything. You need to extract it and need to configure it, which is the next step. So basically what we do is there's File Manager, built in cPanel, has the ability to extract compressed files. And it asks us, where would we like to extract it to? We'll just extract it to this, that's fine. And we're left with all these, okay? So as you can see, this is the sort of the application files that make up WordPress. So what you're looking at here is all the files. So similar to if you have, your Windows system for your Windows machine or your Apple laptop, you have a bunch of system files. These are the files that actually run WordPress. So then what we can do, now at the moment, we've extracted it to a folder called WordPress. And if you wanted to go to your site, /blog, for example, you can rename this folder to blog, and that's where your WordPress install will sit. What I usually, or most of the projects I work on, usually WordPress is actually running the entire site. So what we do is we move the files. And we just say, right, we don't want it installed in WordPress, we just delete that. So we're going to install it to the web root, to the root of that particular domain. So when you go to example.com, that will actually bring up the main WordPress installation. So before, we had it in that level, and then afterwards we're left in the actual main root of the site. So a bit of cleaning up, and I think this is a sort of preferential thing, but I do recommend that whenever you're working on, especially a public website, that you delete any files that are temporarily used or backups or things that are not needed. That's just good housekeeping. A good housekeeping guest cleans up after them, and that's really, a good guest cleans up after them, so that's what you want to focus on. In particular, when it comes to a security perspective, you don't want to leave backups. There are automated scripts that go out looking for, backup.zip, config.bak, for example. People quite often will expose their configuration files by doing things like that. So you need to always make sure that you know what's on your web server. And that's just the sign of professional, somebody that's actually looking after what they're working on, and it can help save problems down the track. People can also delete license, README, other files. You can do that if you want. That's a sort of preferential thing. That's fine. So creating a database. Okay, so currently what we've done is we've downloaded WordPress, we've uploaded it, extracted the files, and we've got that now sitting on our server. So it's not ready to go yet because at the moment it's just a bunch of files. It actually hasn't been configured to use what really one of the powers of having an web application is using a database. So it's a lot faster, it helps us manage a lot of content easily. So what we do is we create a database user and password. So WordPress uses a database to store its content and configuration. Not all content, but quite a bit of it. these are some of the words that you've probably heard, and I've included them just to sort of know that this is, to try and demystify a lot of the jargon terms that you hear. But MySQL is very popular. It's not only the database that most people who use WordPress use, it's also something if you see e-commerce sites or other different content management systems also uses MySQL. Got here, some are better suited at tasks than others, but MySQL is by far the most popular database. So you can create a database a lot of different ways. And luckily, we can use cPanel as well to just quickly create a database, and it's very easy. It's probably, I'd say, the step that most people say, oh, I don't want to create databases. It's good to know because especially if you ever have to back up or move host, or if you have to run some sort of repair operation, it's good to at least know how this works. Even if you don't use it yourself, it's just good to know. So we're going to save our details just using a temporary text file. You can delete it afterwards. But basically, we're looking at creating the database, the user, and then the password. And I'll show you why we need that in a second. So down here in cPanel, and I'm using cPanel in this example. Actually, who here uses cPanel? Okay, so quite a few people, so the majority. And it is the most popular that you find. But if you'll find that your web host, if they don't use cPanel, they'll use something similar. And they'll always have MySQL, File Manager, and these sorts of options. And it's where you'd set up things like your email address or forwards or modifications to your DNS records if you want to run multiple different domains and that kind of thing. So basically, that's what we're looking for. And essentially what we're doing is we're creating a database. So that's actually the actual database that's going to store our WordPress files. We create a user. We make sure that we've got the password generator is usually a very strong, complex password, so I'd recommend leaving that. I'd highly recommend always using the stronger password, the better. So a good sort of tip is when you start doing these things, you end up with a lot of passwords. So try and use a password manager. If you're using a text file or a spreadsheet, it's probably time to look at using a password management system, something like LastPass or KeyPass, those sorts of things. Who uses a password manager at the moment? So a few people. So it's essentially what it helps you doing is you'd only have to remember one password to get into your password manager rather than having to remember all different ones. Because the problem is most people will tend to use the same passwords. And we've all seen sites such as LinkedIn and some other really high-profile sites who have had their passwords, has their systems compromised and passwords being published on the internet. So quite often when people use the same passwords, it's going to cause them problems down the track. So that's the sort of password that you want to see. That's sort of something that looks kind of good. Can't remember that. I don't even want to type that out. I just want to be able to copy that into my password manager. Yeah. So the next thing is to add the user to the database. So we've created the database, we've created the user, but we haven't told MySQL associate that user to this database, which is what this is. And really all these things are, you make sure that that's ticked, and really what that says is let this user do all sorts of stuff with the database. Confirm what you've done. So I've got two other examples here, but that's the one we've just created. And that's what you'd expect to see. So you'd expect to see the database user. I tend to use this kind of convention, just so I kind of know that they're the two different things, but you can call it whatever you want. So I copy them to my text file, and I'll show you why we do this in the example. And then we fire up our website. So we go to the URL where we've just installed these files. And it says, doesn't seem to be a config. I need this before we get started, or we can create one. So we create one. And it's reminding us that before we actually get rolling with WordPress, we need to know the database username, password. Database host I haven't mentioned because the vast majority of the time it's actually local host, but your web host will tell you, or when you go to create your database, it will tell you if it's on a different server, in which case you just enter the server name. Table prefix, we'll get into that in a second. So essentially this is what it looks like. So that's why I mentioned you keep that there. So you copy that. I don't usually type, I usually copy and paste, so I make sure that it's always the same. And that's what we get left with. So again, database name, username, password, and then table prefix. Now by default, it's WP_. I'd always recommend changing that, and I think best practice is considered to change the table prefix. If you want to run multiple WordPress installations on the one database, which you can do, this allows you to do it. So you might have WordPress WP1, 2, or WP blog, WP portfolio, something like that. But essentially, it's also good from a security perspective because people can run scripts that blindly look for WP underscore options or something else. So run the installation script. Now, really all that is, it's just, it's saying, right, we've all right Sparky, you've made it to the installation, now run the install. And you're greeted with the first steps to configure your site, which is your site name and your admin username. And I think if there's anything that I'd recommend is never use the default, which is admin, because again, that gives an attacker they've already know something about your site. Now, there's ways that people can, there's advanced techniques people can use to get this sort of information anyway. But what you're doing is you're not becoming some of the low-hanging fruit there, because there's so many WordPress installations around. You don't want to make it easy for people that want to mess with it. Again, strong passwords, and I like to use the passphrases. We're sort of beyond passwords, so think of long sentences, and that's what your password should be using. And if you're using a password manager, that's going to manage it for you, so the stronger the better. Email address, and then the one thing down the bottom is privacy. So who knows what privacy does? Anyone know what that does? So basically it says, it's changed the wording over the years, but pretty much it just said, discourage search engines to index this site. Now, the search engines still know the site exists, but what it's saying is if it's a well-behaved search engine, it won't index the content on your site. So especially if you're developing your site, you might not want to have people seeing bits of it indexed in Google and coming across a half-finished site. There are other plugins, things like Ultimate Coming Soon or Maintenance Mode, that you can put the site in, or you can password protect it. This is not password protection. So a lot of people think that it's not in the search engine, so nobody can come across my site. Far from the truth. Don't think of this as security. Think of this as just discouraging Google, etc., to index your content as you're working on it. Personally, I like to get the search engines indexing it as soon as possible, so I don't particularly mind. I just try and make sure I don't put anything on a live site that's bad. So WordPress has been installed, and that's the message that you get, success. So it says here, expecting more, sorry to disappoint. Now, it's very quick. I've gone through that process that only takes a few minutes in great detail. And as you can see, there's actually not that much to it. And we've sort of gone over the majority of what you need to know. You also get an email. So check your inbox. You say, we've just set up. If you don't get this, go and check your email address, that you make sure that you've entered it correctly. Because if you need to reset your password, the easy way to do it is to just reset your password and it sends it to the email address you've configured. Okay, so we've got WordPress. It's working, and that's what we're greeted with. To log in, down the bottom here, which you can't see, which I've zoomed in, there's a little link to log in, or you can also go to your site/login at any time, and that takes you to the login for the WordPress dashboard. So that is the place where you configure everything to do with your site. Functionality, look and feel, content, and Amelia will be walking through that. Okay, WordPress dashboard, and now the demo. And what I'm going to do is just quickly go over it, and then I'll sort of show you how easy it is to do, and hopefully it works. So I'm going to download WordPress. It should not take too long. Well, I've already got it installed, so let's just get to it. So this is cPanel, and this gives us, as I said before, access to everything connected to our hosting account. Email forwarding, domain management. You might notice down here there's some other things called scripts and one-click installs and all sorts of stuff that you might have seen. You can install WordPress this way, but I wouldn't recommend it. And we'll cover just after the demo a couple of reasons why. But what we're looking for is File Manager. And as you can see, this is what it asks you. Now, I always usually tick that because I don't really want to be asked all the time. So click Go. And we've got a browser. Now, just sort of so everybody knows what we're doing, let's create a file called tests. And if we go to that site, you can see that file that I've just created is there. Okay, so what I'm showing you, this is a live website, live domain in a URL that's active. And also I've connected by my FTP client just to show you another way. And if you're comfortable using something like, what are the popular FTP programs? FileZilla, CuteFTP, CyberDuck, there's quite a few different ones. I'm using Transmit in this example. But let's go back. Uploads in a new window, so what we say is we upload, choose a file. You don't have to worry about the examples there, so we've got WordPress there, .zip, and starting upload, and always look down the bottom right-hand corner, it gives you a status update on the actual progress of the upload. Okay, won't take too long. Okay, so that's done, a couple of seconds left. Okay, and that's obviously dependent on the speed of the internet. So there's the WordPress file. We've highlighted it, then we extract it. Actually, hang on, before I want to be a good house guest and delete this, because we don't want cruft on our server. We need to make sure it's pristine. So extract. And it's saying we've just extracted all these files from the zip, and we delete that because we don't need that anymore. And now, as before I said, I want that in the main root of the website. So we can select all, and then we click on Move. So the icons up here are pretty much just basic file management icons. And we say we don't want it there. Now, if we wanted to say install it under /blog, we could just put, we could have renamed the folder WordPress to blog. Okay, so that's done. And we delete the WordPress folder, and we're done. Okay, so if we go back to our FTP client, we could have uploaded it via FTP as well, but File Manager is something everyone has. And there are all the files. Okay. So the next stage is now we've done that, now we install our database. And once you've done this a couple of times, you just don't even think when you're doing it. It's just second nature. So we'll call this WPM for WP Melbourne, create the database, then we'll create WP user. We'll let it generate a strong password. And what we'll do is we'll put that password in our text file. Okay, so you might wonder, why is this a site manner? The root of this account's called site manage. If your company, your main account's called Acme, you'd probably have Acme _ something. You can't change that. That's just the prefix that the hosting company gives you. So we associate the two. Oops. We correct the mistake that I made here, WPM. All privileges, make changes. And this is probably the most sort of detailed part of the install, but like I said, it's good to know because it's going to be handy knowledge that you have in the future for other projects. Okay, so if we have a look here, we just confirm we've got the right stuff, we've got the right details, so let's compare side by side. WPM, WPD user, and password. Okay, we're done. So we've uploaded that. So what's the next step we need to do? We just visit our URL and run the installer. So again, it's prompting us. It's saying create the config file, which we will. It's reminding us we need the database details. So usually what I'll do is just to make sure that I've got the same details. And I'll show you when we finish this, I'll show you what happens if you don't get the right details, because it happens to all of us every now and again. Make sure. Correct. Yep. So, sorry. Database name. So what was it? WPD user. Okay, so I installed it a couple of times so it reminded the browser trying to be helpful. And we call it this table prefix. I use the site initials of what I'm working on. It can be anything. Anyone have any preferences on how they install it? Random something, yep. So, yes, yep. So we'll call it just something like that. Just so we know, when you look at your database, if you ever have to go into it, you can tell what it is. Okay, all right, Sparky, run the install. So test site. Suppose we can use that. Actually, I will use that one, why not? Sorry about that. It's nothing like... The database one? No, that's separate. So you've got, yeah, good question. Yep, thanks for that. So this is your admin username. What we're creating now is WordPress is actually already installed. It's just saying, I've installed, I'm ready to go. I just need to create an admin which has full access to the site. So this is what you guard. You guard these details and make sure that you've set a strong password. And just to sort of show you, I'll just quickly jump to show you what I would use. I'd use a password generator and I'd copy a strong password so my password manager actually remembers it, so I don't have to. So that's what I was talking about, not having to remember it. And then I say, this is whelp demo. Next time I go to this site, it'll actually prompt me and I can just click an icon and log straight in. So it saves you a lot of time and it helps raise the level of security on the way you're working on the web. So it's very important. So I can show you exactly what I mean. And if we go to this, you can see it's recorded the site, the username and the password. And if you select that, it's saying that it got the wrong username. Don't listen to me. Used, yeah. It did, yeah. But you can see the passwords there. The password managers aren't 100%, but they do work if you kind of get used to them. So I'm locked out of my... Of course, a demo would never go wrong. Maybe, yeah. Hang on a tick. I'll get it. That was definitely the password, wasn't it? It was that horrible one that was definitely the username. As you can see, nothing ever goes wrong. Okay, so that looks like Safari messed with it somehow. But yeah, once you have it working, I'm usually a Chrome user, but I've got Chrome add-ons and stuff, so I thought I'd use Safari. Mental note: don't ever do that again. So okay, so you've got WordPress there. If you want to view it, there's the site. As you can see, it's up and running and working. So that's pretty much it. So it's very simple and easy, providing you don't mess up your password. It's pretty easy. Okay, so just a couple more slides and then we're done, and I'll pass over to Amelia. Okay, so a few other files that you might see around your website. You've probably heard of this, htaccess. This is basically a web server configuration file that can be configured at a folder level. So you can have folders, and web hosts basically say, we'll let our clients make certain configuration changes. So depending on who you're using, not everything will work doing that, but usually you can do things like setting up password protection, setting up redirections. This is the sort of stuff that the SEO people like to play around with to make sure that things are set up properly. You might see this robots.txt, which basically gives instructions to search engines on what to index on your site and things like where to find a sitemap. And a sitemap is a file that basically says, these are the files that change often, and here's how often they change, and what priority to kind of search your site, especially when you've got a lot of pages. When you're talking about thousands, tens of thousands or more, this sort of stuff becomes really important. And again, this is more something that the SEO people are very involved with. Humans.txt is something you might also come across. Some web developers use it. Basically gives a little bit of a blurb about how the site was built, how the site was set up. So that's like a user file, whereas this is something that only the search engines use. And also a favicon.ico, and you've got other things like Apple have a special format of their images for iPhones, iPads, and high-res retina displays. And there are lots of different formats. So if you're interested in that kind of stuff, definitely come along to the developer meetup or some of the web developer or designer groups. But essentially, it's a little icon that you see when someone bookmarks your site or when they visit your site in the little top of your browser. So installation problems, and here's a couple that you'll see. Incorrect database details is a big one. I was actually going to put forgetting a username admin password, and I thought, there's no way anybody would ever do that. So that's what happens if you've got a problem with your database. If it can't find it, if you've got the wrong details, that's the message that you'll see. There's ways that you can get more information, but essentially go back and double check you've created your database correctly and it works. So this sort of thing as well. So classic example would be when we enter if you're editing the config file manually, sometimes you might add some extra characters in there and you might see something like this. Again, try and restore from your backup or start again if you've got something like that. And server issues, there are lots to mention. Check with your web host. They usually have a knowledge base for people working with installing WordPress. Google, or come along to meetups like this. But you may have heard of the one-click installers. Reason not to use them are because they might be very out of date, and running a secure, efficient WordPress installation really relies on you running the latest possible version. And WordPress is working extremely hard at making sure that that's a seamless process, so you're always running the latest code. So that goes against what, not that there's anything wrong with these particular scripts, I'm using them as a general example, but you want to make sure that you're running the code. And really, all they do is they ask for some details and they create some things by default. You might not get a chance to change things like the table prefix. It might bundle plugins and other things that you don't want. So that's why I recommend doing it the manual way. WordPress management systems like Infinite WP and Managed WP have cloning features. So if you're working at a company where you've got all this sort of stuff set up, there might be another way to install. Backup Buddy, some people use Backup Buddy to sort of get their master site and then install it on other servers. That also works. We had a really good presentation at our last developer meetup on WP CLI, which is a command line interface for managing WordPress. You can do all sorts of funky stuff with that. It's very powerful. If you're into the command line, definitely look at that. Version control, a lot of people push their sites out from version control, and if you've got working with developers or are a developer, you're probably using this. And also just manually copying files, pulling files down if you're comfortable with using the command line or your FTP client. So next steps, come to the meetup if you need help or want to learn more, which are already here. That's sort of written for the people that actually look at this stuff online. WordPress Codex has lots of information. Search, if you're at 2, refine your search query, or ask a friend. So just to recap, we download WordPress, we upload it, we create a database, and we run the installation script. In red, scary red, make sure you secure your installation. Amelia will walk through plugins. If we've chosen a good, strong password, we haven't used admin as a username, we've already lifted ourselves above the low-hanging fruit, but there are several good security plugins that would be also considered best practice, and we'll talk about them. Amelia will talk about them. So any questions? Go for it. Yeah, cool.
So say, for example, you got a host which an old site is on it. Can you delete everything out of the root, or you can delete?
Okay, so if you've got a whole bunch of those dot files, like FTP quota.
Say you've got an old website, you
Oh.
an old CMS, whatever.
Okay. Yep. Okay, so probably the best answer to that, and this is just sort of a preferential thing, would be to make sure that you've audited any of the links that you've got coming into your site. So if you've got an old static website and you've got sort of slash, about us, and people are linking to that page, ideally you'd want to create what's called a 301 redirect to make sure that about us.html redirects to your new, slash about, which might be the new URL structure that you've got. So, mapping URL structures, there's simple 301 redirects for anyone that's interested in doing that. There's a couple of others. Basically what that does is it sort of retains any links that you've got rather than somebody going to a 404. When you tell Google, I've now got a new site, submitted the sitemap, you've done all the right things, you might be using some SEO software, you'll find that Google will know, but anyone that's got sites, if you've got other webmasters who have got content linking to your old links, that can be a pain. Now, site migration is a huge issue, and it's another topic all on its own, but good question. The other thing is you want to make sure that you've got a copy of your content. So I usually create a folder and move it temporarily, run some checks, run some link checking software, make sure that I've actually mapped all the URLs that I did have before. And so that's a good question though. So whatever you do, I say delete, make sure everything's tidied up, but make sure that you're not going to be undoing any hard work that you've already done. Yep.
Second question, like with the one-click install, you say it puts an old version in it.
It could.
But I mean, an older version you can still upgrade because as soon as you start WordPress, it prompts you to update the latest version anyway.
A lot of the time, the problem with the one-click installers can be if they're out of date, if the one-click installers themselves, like generally speaking as projects, they're pretty active and they want people to have secure WordPress sites. They don't want to be giving people problems. But if you've got a host that hasn't not on the bleeding edge, look, the new ones give you the ability to, they sort of try and lock it down for you, and they give you sort of email updates when it's ready to be updated. But it's adding another unnecessary step, and usually months down the track, if you're trying to find out what a problem is, you might find that they've done things like set permissions that are different to sort of what you're used to.
I was just going to say on that, with the one-click installers, one of the big security sort of risks is leaving your username as admin. Years ago, the default WordPress username was admin, and you can get a choice whether to install it or not an admin username. Nowadays, when you install it, you get the choice to obviously use a good username. A lot of the old one-click installers still don't give you a choice to set your username. So when you install WordPress, you end up with an admin username, and typically people don't bother changing it.
Yeah.
And that's when
Yeah.
you get the security issues.
Yep.
For example, I thought the time I installed it, just get the email address. I host that's my username, my email address.
Yep.
Some one-click installers will make a layer that will prompt you for a username, but some don't, and obviously you can't really sell it.
I think one of the issues is because there are so many different installers, Softaculous and Scriptaculous, a whole bunch of different things. You're not sort of comparing apples and apples. So when you look for help, if you're using an older version, it might not be, something might not be installed. So I think it's just taking one step out of the process. For some people, it might be good. Just the 5-minute install, very easy. And I think, and then you're in control, you know what you've done. And as Anthony said, setting the username, setting the table prefix, knowing that you're not installing extra plugins that you don't really know about. These are things that, it's
Some hosts will have more than one kind of installer as well, and they'll be looking like my hosts. They've got
Fantastico and
it's there because they used to use it.
Yep.
But if you use that, you'll end up with WordPress 3.5.
Yeah. Which is not cool.
If you use Softaculous, which they're looking after, well,
Yep.
then you'll get 3.8.1. So,
Yep.
I mean, at the end of the day, it will work
Yep.
if you're doing all the right things, if you're changing all of those variables that we've already talked about. It's not the end of the world.
Yeah.
But because we know, and because it's actually not that hard to do it the right way.
Yep.
That's why we go. Do it the right way, you can do it.
Correct.
The right way.
Yep. Exactly.
And hey, it gives you cred, right? Because when you're talking to your friends and they go, oh yeah, we use this really cool thing called Softaculous to install a WordPress, you can say to them, well, actually, I did it the right way.
Yep.
And I know all about it. And so you're a step above. So,
Yep.
yeah.
So yeah,
Should get a badge.
you do.
I did the right way.
Any other questions? Yep, one at the back.
Yeah.
Good question.
I just didn't want to do rather the headlights to Chris, that's all.
Yeah, no, that's okay. So if you've got any questions, feel free to chat to us afterwards. Post it on Meetup. That's my name, Twitter, email, whatever. And always happy to help people.
There's a discussion board on Meetup that not everybody knows about, and we're actually pretty across what's happening on there. So if you do have questions, we're totally fine. If you go, help,
Yep.
ask away, and
Yep.
any one of the other group can answer the questions, or we can answer the questions. People just forget that it's there.
Absolutely. Yep.
And there are no silly questions. Any nasty parties will get the boot, so
Yeah.
ask away.
Absolutely. I mean, Google's my friend, and I make mistakes all the time, as you've seen with my username. So yeah. All right, if no more questions, thank you everyone for your time, and look forward to Amelia's talk. Thank you.
The dashboard and the first 10 minutes, and ironically this will probably go longer than 10 minutes, but we'll probably have things to discuss, and I've got funky slides to show you. Okay, so what I've got for you. So slides of the new kids on the block. I have a thing about putting pop culture into my slides. I do not like boring PowerPoint presentations, so I try to chuck a few things in there, and I try to nonsensically match things up. So try and watch out for how I've tried to match that one up. So I'm going to take you through the first 10 minutes of inside of WordPress, so the basic setup, configurations, things like that. So how to get your admin configured, have a look at some security that you can add inside of WordPress. It's not going to make your site 100% proof. Nothing can make your site 100% proof, but you can do the best that you can to make your site stand out so that blanket scripts don't, target you. So hence things that Chris was talking about, changing all those common factors and taking yourself out of that loop. So setting up a maintenance routine, or we're just going to look at it anyway, and some plugin suggestions. So a little bit about me, for those who haven't met me before. I do online training for people who want to set up their own WordPress website. Specifically, I use Genesis and Thesis themes, so I talk people through that. That's only been going since October. Before that, I was with Optus for 8 years, and 4.5 of those was as a web developer. And before that, I was a chef. So I've had a bit of a checkered career. All right, so I'm now working on my own full-time with WordPress. All right, so here's my new kids on the block flavour. So we're going to do this step-by-step guide to the first 10 minutes in the WordPress admin. So first one, step 1, so there's Danny, God love him. We're going to have lots of fun. Okay, so the WordPress configurations. So we're logging into WordPress for the first time. And there's a few ways that you can go and log in. And the one I never see given is just putting login after your domain name. I always see the bottom two given all the time. But the easiest one is just to put login after your domain name. That's the easiest way to get in. And that's what your login screen is going to look like. And hopefully you have remembered your password and you'll be able to log in. So a couple of little handy links outside of that. So if you've lost your password, you'll go to this wp-login.php, action equals lost password. So this bit is quite important. If you have set up user registration, which you can allow people to subscribe to your blog and become a user themselves, we've then got the action equals register, okay? At the moment I don't, although the site that I was using as screen grabs doesn't have registration allowed, but I'll show you how you can do that if you want people to be able to be a subscriber on your site. Okay, so first thing when you log in, I do have some bits about the dashboard, but first thing is to set your clock. So you'll go into the settings and you will go into the general there, and you've got this time here, and currently it's set to UTC +0. You can open that up and there'll be some drop-down options. Scroll up and you will see all the different cities, and Melbourne is in there, and for some reason Lord Howe Island is on there. I don't know why. Must be a lot of WordPress users on Lord Howe. All right. So we've got permalinks as well. That's going to be the next thing. Now, permalinks, if you don't understand what permalinks, out of the box, your permalinks are going to look something like this, and P equals 1. So this is a post. Now, every time you put a post, a content, a category, anything like that, it's going to have an identifier, and it goes from 1 and increases from there. So that's post equals 1. So that's got an ID of 1. And that's WordPress talking to the database going, hey, I want the post content details where the ID equals 1. And the database returns that back to WordPress and shows it on the screen. There'll be, I think it's page underscore ID is for page, and cat equals 1 will be a category. Doesn't look that attractive, and that is a link that people can actually use in social media, and Google could pick these things up as well. What you're looking to try and do is make something a little bit more friendly, okay? So there's the hello world post, and it's now just hyphenated the post name, and that looks a little bit better. So you go into your common settings, and by default, you'll be got this default one, which is here's the P123. Depending on how you've got your content set up will determine which one you choose here. So if your content is evergreen, you probably won't want to choose these date ones. You'll probably want to go for something like this sample post here, which is what I've used to achieve that one. So that's the one you're looking at using, okay? And make sure you do an update with that. Underneath there, you'll have where you can rename the category and the tag. So up the top, you've got your permalink there that says category/uncategorized, because by default, you have to categorize all your posts. You can't have them not in a category. And you're given the uncategorized category out of the box. Now, rather than saying category/uncategorized, so for instance, my site, I do lots of video tutorials. So my categories have been changed into tutorials. And then again, if I do use tags, I change it to how to. So once you've done that, you've then got that permalink there. So it says tutorials/uncategorized. Okay, so that's a nice way of setting up your permalinks a little bit differently with regards to those. All right, so step 2, there's so much we can do. Good old Donnie. All right, so in the WordPress dashboard, when you log in, first thing you can do is you can drag and drop things around on the page. So when you come into the dashboard, so for instance, here's the quick draft, just hover over the top, you'll see a little cross appear, just left click on your mouse, hold it down and drag things around. You'll see that there's an outline appearing there. And as you move it around, you'll see that outline appear underneath and over the top and whatever. So you can drop that into place once you finish. Just release your finger from the left click and that's all done. So you can rearrange how your dashboard appears. Same goes for your pages and your posts. So this is the sidebar here. The text editor for the post would be over here somewhere. And so you can actually move these things around, as well as any of the boxes that sit underneath your text area. So if you decide to have the discussion box where you can set the comments and trackbacks permalinks, it sits underneath by default. You can drag that up into here and WordPress will automatically resize that for you. And WordPress also remembers any changes that you've made. So if I've moved tags up above categories, WordPress remembers that the next time I go back in. So you can do things like that. So drop it like it's hot. If you want more room on your screen, some people don't use this or don't know about it, this collapse menu here. So most people hover over things and you'll see the flyout menus appear. You can click on that collapse menu and it just collapses that into the icons. You'll still see the flyout menus if you hover over each one of those icons. So you're not losing anything, you're not losing where everything is at, you're just losing the text there, okay? And again, WordPress will remember that for you, and if you want to show it again, just click on the arrow again, and that's all done. All right, so organising your screen. We've got 2 tabs sitting up the top of your screen. First one is the screen options. If you click on that arrow, you'll see these boxes drop down, and this one's for when you're in the post and pages, and this one's when you're in any of the other admin areas. And these change depending on which page you're in or which screen you're in at the time in the admin. So this is for the dashboard, and you'll see that some have ticks and some don't. So if you don't want to see that quick draft, and frankly I've never used it, I untick that. So then it disappears from my WordPress dashboard. And and there's the welcome. So when you log in for the first time after you've installed, you'll see that big welcome box and you can click dismiss. It just unchecks that for you. But if you do the drop down, you can recheck that if you want to. So yeah, I usually at a glance, and sometimes the activity, depending on what plugins and themes you're using, you might have other areas on the dashboard. So for Thesis, it has its own little area on the dashboard. Some other plugins have them as well. So you can show and hide them. It's totally up to you. The same for posts here. So I haven't got the whole screenshot because it was too big, but things like the excerpts and discussions, things like that are unchecked at the moment. So we can't see the WordPress excerpts, we can't see the discussions. Sometimes tags is unchecked as well. So you can check and uncheck these, and you can change the number of columns as well if you wish to. Changing it to 1 means everything just appears underneath each other, okay? So at the moment, by default, you'll have your big area and then a sidebar there. It just removes all of that if you check the 1. And once you're finished, just click on the arrow again, and that hides it. Nice and simple. You can clean your dashboard up or your screens up the way you want it. Next one is Ask WordPress for Help, and they provide a help button there right beside the screen options. And if you click on that, down comes this box. And this will change on a page-by-page or screen-by-screen basis. So we're looking in the new post screen at the moment, and it's got some links that you can click through. So you can click onto all of these different links, and it'll bring up different information about what you can do. So this actually comes in from the codex. This is stuff that WordPress is telling you. So this is their information. And there's links around if you need to do anything. You've got the support forums there if you need to go in there. And so that's available. And again, it changes on a screen-by-screen basis. So if you're in the general settings and you don't know what to do, click on the help. It'll show you all the things that you can do within the general settings area. So that's a really good guide if you're not too sure where you're going and you don't want to go through Google and search for all the bits and bobs. That's a really nice place to start. All right, so step 3. So we've got Jordan. It's just you and me, users and comments. So we've spoken quite heavily tonight about removing the admin user. So I've installed WordPress and I've got my own username there. If you happen to have admin on there and you're thinking, my gosh, I want to get rid of it right now, I want to go home, what you'll do first, go into Add New, create a new username, make sure you give it administration access and create that user. Log out of the admin, go back into this new profile you've created. You can then delete the admin from there, okay? And then you just set about using that one. So that's a good way of being able to get rid of it. Connection lost. Okay, next thing. This is a nice little security tip. Update your display name. So we've got this display name publicly as. By default, you're given your username, and you cannot change that. You can't change that at all. But you can add some details about yourself. So you can give yourself a nickname. So yeah, well, Wonder Woman, because I love Linda Carter. We've got my name. And then you've got this drop down here, and it's got a whole variation of different things that you can set your display name publicly as. Now, this is the name that you will see when you write a post or a page or comment. That's the name that's going to come up against your avatar or the post or page. Now, the reason why I'm saying update that is because you might be giving half of your login details away. The way this happens is that, especially with the comments, so if I didn't change anything, here's my username beside my comments, right? And there's I've got as Wonder Woman. And you can change that once you've updated your username, etc. But if someone decides to go, I wonder if I can log in as Amelia. So if they enter Miss M and say just any old random password, this is the error that comes up. The password you entered for the username, Miss M, is incorrect. So that's letting the person know that that username exists, and then it says lost your password. This one returns a blank because invalid username. So someone's tried to put Wonder Woman in there and a fake password and it hasn't come back because you can't use your nickname to log in. You always need to use your username. So that's a really nice little handy tip for you just to make things just a little bit more secure. As I said, it's never going to be 100% secure, but it gives you that little bit of an edge where people can't see your username, because generators can grab your password pretty easily. All right, here's the user registration part. If you go into the general settings, you will see this here, anyone can register. If you've got that checked and you don't want people to register, uncheck it. If you do want people to be a member of your site or subscribe, make sure you've got them set as the subscriber role. It gives them very limited, all they can do is just come in and read stuff. That's all they can do. But you can set that to be something else if you want to, but make sure that you've done that. Okay. All right, so spam. So I've got a couple of plugins there. One you'll be familiar with, which is Akismet. The first one I've got up above is Spam Destroyer. Now with Akismet, you need to, I haven't used it for so long, but you need to get an API key. And there is the option of purchasing, is it a month-by-month basis or?
If it's a site for personal use, you can get it for free. You can get the
a month.
It's basically, the whole setup is basically voluntary.
Yeah, so it's pay what you want.
If you've registered a site with an API key before, you can reuse that and on other websites. But if you're setting up client websites, you wouldn't use your API key.
Yeah. Okay.
Sites. So you can get it for nothing, but yes, you will need, and to register your API key, you will need a username and password from WordPress.com. So you have to sign up with WordPress.com.
Yep.
You may not need a blog on WordPress.com, but you'll need a user ID and password to do that.
Okay.
So it's great, it totally works, it's the default, that's why it's in there, but it's kind of a headache when you can use something like that Spam Destroyer.
Yeah, so that's the first one I got here, Spam Destroyer. Now, this is a free plugin from the repository, so it's a WordPress approved one or one that WordPress likes. And it pretty much does the same thing, but does in the background. You don't need to do any settings, you don't need to grab any API keys, you don't need to pay for anything. All you do is install it, activate it, done. It'll do all the work for you in the background, and it does work with most the popular contact form. I think it works with Gravity and Contact Form 7 if you're using any of those. So it will work with that. And it just adds that little bit of extra protection in the background code underneath your site that prevents the bots from automatically spamming your site with comments and contact forms, etc. So that's one way of going about the spam. Second way is with your comments, okay? So you can do a lot of things with regards to setting up the discussion settings. So you go into general and discussion, and this is where you can set up with comments. Now, I've added a link down here because there's so many things that we could go through. This post here does a really good job of explaining how all those settings work. Okay, I know it's a bit dated with saying 2009, from November 2009, but not much has changed within the comments within WordPress, so don't worry about the dating of it. It still does an effective job and tells you everything that you need to know. Even though you've got things set up by default there, you can still set up things on a post-by-post basis. So if you don't want to allow comments and trackbacks, pingbacks on pages or posts, you have this discussion area. Go into that screen options tab, make sure that the discussion is ticked, and then you'll see this box appear below. And you can just check and uncheck those on a post-by-post or page-by-page basis. So that's another way of distracting the nasty folk from sending you Viagra emails and comments.
I just want to mention that when we were talking about the news earlier and the problems with that is the thing that you would turn off, the trackbacks and pingbacks.
Yes. This one here, the allow link notifications from other blogs, pingbacks and trackbacks. So it's just the way that blogs talk amongst each other. Now, hopefully I'm getting it right. Pingbacks is where you get a notification that someone has linked to you. Trackbacks, or is that the wrong way? Trackbacks is where you see it.
I just you leave a comment on somebody else's blog, it posts, or somebody links to you, it posts a comment on your site, and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
It's kind of a dated technology, really. It can be kind of helpful, but yeah, so turning that off is the thing that they're saying is one of those things that you should do for security while this problem has been occurring with the
Denial of service. Yep, so that's a way.
Why do you get feedback from yourself?
You've interlinked.
If you've created a post and you've linked to another post in your website, so it's a part 1 or a part 2, it's a link back to somewhere on content on your site, so it will give you a notification.
Yeah. I mean, the good thing about when they talk about content marketing is to make sure you're linking between all your different pages. But when you do that and you publish a post, suddenly there's an email and you're thinking you've got a comment from moderation or something like that, and it's because you've linked to yourself. But yeah. Okay, so we've got Joey. Can give you more. He's my favourite new kids on the block. Personally, so handsome. WordPress plugins and security. All right. So plugins and themes. I think any developer here in the room will say don't play with core code. Never play with core code. And I take that further and say don't ever play with the core code of your theme as well. If you are wanting to extend your theme a bit further, learn how to make child themes. Highly recommend it. Go into the codex on wordpress.org and learn how to do that. I'm not going to go through that here because it's a little bit complex. Plugin suggestions, if you really must add things into your website, Justin Tadlock's got a really good article here on how to create a functionality plugin for yourself. So you might come across some snippets of code saying, just add this into a functions.php file. This is the article that will show you how to make that file that you can add those to. There's another plugin here for simple custom CSS. So if you want to make any design tweaks, this is a really good one. Just sets up a little tab in the dashboard, and you can just go into there and make little tweaks if you understand and know how to write CSS code. And I found this one the other day. It's only brand new, so it hasn't got a lot of stars, but it's got a few downloads. It's a custom 404 error page. If you don't know what a 404 error page, it's when someone comes to your site and they've written a wrong URL. And they'll just say, oops, sorry, you've come to the wrong place, or it will say just up the top, 404 error or something like that. So what you can do with that particular plugin, you can do it with some themes as well, is you can assign a page that you've created for them to see if they write an incorrect URL. And the reason why you would do that is for telling people, hey, this is me, you've possibly come to the wrong page. Are you looking for this? Click here. Are you looking for that? Click there, so that they're not clicking on the back button. You want them to hang around on your site. So that's a nice way of getting them to stay around, is if they've come incorrectly somewhere, redirect them into the right place. All right. So security. So some considerations that you might want to think about. Login protection. Even though you might have a strong password, etc., if you've got a membership like myself, you've got people who are logging into your site all the time, and you want to provide a little bit of protection, not only for yourself, but also for the members that you've got within your site, because their information and their protection is very, very important. So login protection, it prevents brute force attacks. So when people try to log into your site over and over and over and over and over and over again, and it will lock them out after failed attempts. Now, some plugins differ on how they work. Sometimes it's a 3 strikes, you're out. After 3 strikes, you're out. Come back after 5 minutes, do it again. A few more times, you're logged out for 24 hours or something like that. And I have had a user not reset her password, but get herself logged out for 24 hours and then kind of email me in a not very nice way and say, why did you do this? And it's because she didn't reset her password when she could have. Firewall, so it blocks the nasty queries and the malicious code from coming through. You've got file monitoring, so things that are made, any changes made to your WordPress files, you'll get a little ping for it. Activity monitoring protects your WordPress admin area, so it just keeps an eye. It doesn't tell you exactly what's been changed, it will just let you know where it's been changed, so you can have a look at what's possibly been changed. Security scanning scans for any malicious activity, malware, spam, and any vulnerabilities in your site. Okay, an all-in-one solution. This will exclude any file monitoring, user activity, or login protection. So these 3 are fairly well known and are recommended. So the slide pack's going to be available for you. So if you don't want to scramble a whole heap of URLs down, it's quite all right. This is going to be available for you, so you can go from there. I'll try and make them hyperlink. I just didn't want the line underneath my thing, because I like things to be pretty. If you want the minimal 5, okay, so for all the areas that I discussed, these are probably the best of the bunch. And again, they'll be in the slide pack after, so they're the ones that are there. Some of them do have premium versions, but because they're saying WordPress.org plugins, they're in the repository, okay? So there is a free or a light version, okay?
So you would install these 5 separate plugins rather than WordFence or WP Security?
As an alternative, I mean, I'm just putting in 2 different alternatives there. So you can either go for the all-in-one solution and then patch. But they won't, most of them don't do the file monitoring, the user activity, or the login protection. Like some of them don't. Oh, will it? Okay.
Yeah, I get emails saying, oh, this file's changed, and I'm like, what the hell? And then, oh, backup, I needed a backup, so there's a new file.
Okay.
So it's
All right.
yes, and better WP will definitely lock people out.
Okay.
So I'm pretty sure that
All
will
right.
do the whole lot.
Okay, I just thought I'd put it there and then just let them know, because then you can then come to this page and grab the ones that aren't being covered, okay? So if you just want the minimal 5 or just 1, totally up to you. I don't recommend on having too many plugins on your site. I know that sounds like a bit of an irony there, but there we go. All right, so there we go. There's Jonathan. Don't you?
I'm like, I remember that they sang stuff, but I don't know who the hell they
I wanted to dance like them. So maintenance and updates. So if you aren't adding a maintenance and update schedule into your week, you need to. It's very important. Update, update, update. You must be updating, okay? There's an area in the dashboard, so if you go into the dashboard tab, there's an update area there. You can go in and you can check if anything needs to be updated. Plugins and themes, most of them will appear down below. And then you've also got your WordPress updates, and that'll let you know whether you need to automatically do anything. Security, the automatic ones. Now this is just between releases, isn't it? So we're coming to 3.9. It won't automatically update you to 3.9. You will still need to do that. It's all those iterations between the major ones that will automatically update. And there'll always be things like security patches, any bug fixes, anything like that. It's never going to be any major features that are suddenly added to your site. So you're not going to have this element of surprise. So you will still need to do your update. But make sure you are going there. Up the top in your toolbar, there will also be what looks like a recycle button. I think it's a recycle button, and it'll have a number in there, letting you know that you've got something to update. It won't say necessarily what you need to update, so best to go in there. Some themes and plugins will put a nag, what's called a nag. You'll see it just up the top here, a little message, and I think it's in yellow now, the word. It will say you've got something to update. So it'll take you through to this area, and it'll start updating everything for you. But make sure you're updating. The reason why? Security. WordPress updates all the time, and it's usually because it's securing and fixing things and plugging the gaps where hackers might get through. So it's in your best interest to make sure you have the most current code on your site, okay? Plugins and themes, test by test basis. I recommend you have a test site that you test things on. If it looks great, excellent, go on your live site and then do the update. All right, backing it up. Make sure you are grabbing backups of your site and not backing it up just to your server. Make sure you have it backed up somewhere else. I've got a couple of suggestions there for you. Back WP up can be a little bit taxing on load time that I've since discovered today when I was reading. I do use that. There is Backup Buddy and all those others, but these are probably the other two. WP DB Manager is probably a nice friendly one. I think it sends to email.
I don't know.
I'm not too sure. Yeah. Back WP up will send to not only email, it will send to server, not that you would. It will also send to S3 and to Dropbox and to all kinds of different places. So that's a nice one to use. But as I said, it can be a little bit taxing on the load time. Automatic does have a paid service where they'll do everything for you. So this is the official WordPress version of Securi, for those who have heard of Securi. So vaultpress.com. And as I said, Securi, I think it's .org, I can't remember, is the other one that you can use as well. But they are paid services, but they're well worth it in the end. It just gives you peace of mind. Yeah, absolutely. I don't use, difference between cPanel backups.
I prefer to keep my WordPress separate and then to download it and keep it off my server. So I've had a couple of clients who were relying on their host or cPanel to do their backup. Their host got hacked. Everything that they had on their server got hacked. One of the big things, I guess, when you're looking at backup type solutions is not just how easy is it to make a backup, how accessible is it. Because if you're logging into WordPress all the time, you jump in, you do your updates, you do all that kind of stuff, to then have to go to cPanel and take care of your backup and do that separately is kind of right? So you might as well keep it all in WordPress. But things like, the other thing to look at when you're doing backup, how easy is it to restore? Now I've never done a cPanel restore. As far as I know, it just moves everything and then just restores everything, which is great. But again, if you're using something like Backup Buddy or some of these others, the restoring process is a lot less complicated. And the thing with WordPress is that $5 a month is golden. They make you a backup every day, and they will store those backups for 30 days. And so, I mean, you can pay them more and they'll store them for longer. If you pay them $15 a month, they'll also be scanning your site for intrusions all the time. So it's just this constant level of security. And they're storing their backups on their servers, not on your server. So that if anything happens, anything goes horribly wrong,
Yeah.
So the entire system, every database, and your email and everything
Yes.
typically on it. It's
Yeah.
not only WordPress. So if you want to restore one WordPress site, you can't.
You don't want to
Yeah.
you don't have to replace every site that you've got on here. That's a really important distinction.
Bit of a, when I said making a test site and testing everything, make sure you're updating any test websites as well. It's called cross-contamination. So if someone gets into one of your websites, they can eventually find their way through your whole server. So if you've got multiple installations of WordPress, make sure they're all updated and secure, because that can happen.
With the test site, you reckon just a site on the subdirectory on the same server? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, lots of people will do like a subdomain. Yeah, just like a, my.yourdomainname.com, which is quite good. Chris was talking about version control in Git. For those who haven't heard of it, it's where we have an online repository of all of our code. And what we can do with that code is we can access it from our local computer, and then we can also push all those changes into our web hosting account, but they're all sitting in this one secure little spot. So that's also a nice way of doing it, so you can have an installation on your machine without needing the internet, and you can do all your changes. You just push everything to your repository, and then you update your live website from there. So that's, if you're interested in Git, definitely have a look if you want to do something like that. That's also a good one. It's a bit techy, but yeah, it's good once you get into it. It's clever. That's pretty much it. No? They did a good job, or they're just very shy.
They're either going, oh my God, I never do it today.
And they're probably still wondering what new kids on the block were doing up on those bloody slides.
Yeah, on a clip, so we can have a dance party now. I'm like, disappointed.
Of course.
Sometimes, probably not so much, the site is quite old, maybe built maybe 2 years ago, and then after suddenly your plugins are very old, probably they not make them anymore, so you update them, you break the plugins. So
Yep.
what's the best situation? I mean, sometimes you can't just update the plugin because it
Yeah.
does something in the background.
Yeah.
You will break it as well. So.
That's probably the best way. That's probably the great idea to have a test website then. So then you can just grab a copy of that, like download it via FTP, re-upload it into your test site and see what happens. I mean, you're only breaking your test site then. You're not breaking, and stopping users from visiting your site and losing money and things like that. So.
It's worth always, if you've got plugins that haven't been updated or if it's going to break, it's worth going through that pain to get something that's current.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even the security plugins, out-of-date security plugins can give you people access to your site. So
Yeah. With plugins, in terms of what do I get and how do I know it's going to be any good, looking at the repository page and checking things like the support and how many times it's been downloaded, how many stars it's got, things like that will help. Some plugin developers like to create their dream because they will get a name for themselves and then they go away. They don't provide the support from there. So things like that do happen where someone just drops a plugin, they never support it.
If they're 200,000 times downloaded or million times, then they're probably quite popular.
Yeah.
So you got 2,000, I usually avoid.
Yeah. Also, do they update their code frequently? So even check, the last updated thing. So things like that really help when determining to get a plugin. But if something like that happens, I'd almost be resourcing a new plugin that does the same things. I'm sure there'd be something better that's come along since. Developers are pretty competitive in that way. There's umpteen million plugins for a Facebook like button out there. Yeah. All right.